Falling for someone was never part of the plan. The avoidant did not enter the connection with the intention of being moved by it, did not approach you with openness, did not allow the walls to come down deliberately, did not make the choice to let something real form. The falling happened the way genuine falling always happens in the avoidant, sideways, before the system had time to evaluate it, in the specific unguarded moment when something about who you actually are arrived before the defense could position itself to intercept. And then it was done. The falling had happened. The claiming was in place. Something real was present in the interior that had not been present before, and that the management protocol, for all its sophistication, could not simply remove. This is the specific situation the avoidant found themselves in, not the comfortable situation of managed warmth toward someone who was pleasant and engaging and worth knowing at the appropriate distance. The genuinely uncomfortable situation of having fallen, actually, specifically, in the refuses-to-be-managed way, for someone whose presence now constituted the kind of real stakes that the entire architecture was built to prevent from existing. And the response to that situation is what this is about. Not the falling itself. The falling was involuntary and the avoidant had no more control over it than anyone has control over genuine falling. The response to discovering that the falling had happened. The specific, understandable, cost-real things response of someone whose system encountered genuine attachment and did what it was built to do when genuine attachment arrived. It stayed away. Why accepting the falling is the problem. The staying away is not about you. This has been said in various forms throughout the psychology of avoidant attachment, and it deserves to be said again here with the specific precision that this particular situation requires. The staying away is about the acceptance problem. The avoidant can fall, has fallen. The feeling is present, is genuine, is specific to you in the particular, irreplaceable way that genuine falling always is. The interior contains what it contains. The claiming has happened. None of that is the problem. The problem is accepting it. Accepting the falling means accepting the vulnerability that the falling produces. Means acknowledging to themselves and eventually to you that someone has gotten through in a way that creates real stakes. That the interior, which was supposed to remain private and manageable and under the control of the self-sufficient architecture, has been genuinely affected by another person's presence. That the self-sufficiency that was supposed to be sufficient has encountered something it cannot simply generate internally. Accepting the falling means accepting that they can now be hurt in a specific way they could not be hurt before you, that your absence would cost something real, that what you think of them matters to them in a way that genuine indifference would not matter. That they are, in the most fundamental relational sense, genuinely vulnerable. The avoidant's entire interior architecture was built to prevent exactly this, was constructed, stone by stone, from the specific, early, pre-language experience of genuine vulnerability, producing the specific pain that the wound encoded as the inevitable consequence of genuine attachment. The architecture did not fail, the falling happened anyway, but the architecture's purpose was to prevent exactly what the falling has produced, and the response to finding that the purpose has been circumvented is the system doubling down on what it was built to do. Staying away is the doubling down. The specific logic of the staying away. From the outside, staying away from someone you have fallen for looks irrational, looks like self-sabotage, looks like the specific, baffling contradiction of wanting something and simultaneously doing the thing most likely to prevent having it. From the inside of the avoidance system, the staying away has a logic that is internally consistent even when it is externally costly. The logic runs like this. The falling has happened and cannot be undone. The vulnerability it produced is real. The stakes are real. Getting closer will deepen the vulnerability and raise the stakes further. The deeper the vulnerability and the higher the stakes, the more catastrophic the potential loss. The management protocol's primary function is to prevent the catastrophic loss. The most effective available action for preventing the catastrophic loss is to prevent the closeness from deepening further. Staying away prevents the closeness from deepening further. Therefore, stay away. This logic does not acknowledge that staying away is itself a form of loss, does not account for the specific, located, this is already costing something quality of the gray that the staying away produces. Does not engage with the evidence that the catastrophic loss the protocol is protecting against has already, in a specific sense, arrived, because the falling has happened and the caring is present, and the loss of you now costs something real regardless of how much distance is created. The logic of staying away was built for a different situation. For the situation of ordinary connection that has not yet crossed the threshold of genuine claiming. In that situation, sufficient distance prevents the claiming from occurring and therefore prevents the vulnerability that claiming produces. the logic works for that situation. For the situation of having already fallen, of the claiming already having happened, of the vulnerability already being present, the logic is insufficient, is attempting to solve a problem that has already passed the point where the available solution applies. The distance being created now is not preventing the vulnerability, is simply adding the cost of distance to the vulnerability that already exists. The avoidance system has not fully processed this, is running the familiar protocol in a situation where the familiar protocol is not adequate to the actual conditions, is staying away from someone they have fallen for on the logic that staying away prevents the falling, when the falling has already happened, and the staying away is producing its own costs without preventing the vulnerability it was deployed to address, what the staying away costs them. The staying away is not comfortable for the avoidant. This is worth stating clearly because the composed, forward motion maintaining exterior of someone who has created distance can read as ease. As someone who made a decision and is living it without particular difficulty, the interior is not comfortable, the falling happened, is present. Does not resolve into the quiet, historical, adequately processed residue of a previous feeling simply because distance has been created. Remains current, remains specific, remains directed at you in the particular, located, refuses to become general way that genuine falling always remains, and the staying away means living with the falling without the outlet of expression, without the proximity that would allow the feeling to find its natural direction, without the contact that would allow what is genuine in the interior to be received by the person it is directed toward. The falling with nowhere to go is its own specific form of interior difficulty, is the feeling running without outlet. Is the caring being present without the capacity to express the caring, producing the specific, persistent, ambient quality of someone who is carrying something they cannot put down and cannot fully acknowledge and cannot address through the staying away that was supposed to make it manageable. The gray is present. The specific, flatness producing, particular quality of absence, quality of a life from which someone has been kept at distance despite, or because of the falling that makes their absence felt. The activities that were sustaining before are slightly less sustaining. The self-sufficiency that was sufficient before is slightly less sufficient. The preferred configuration has been restored and does not feel as preferred as it used to feel. All of this is the cost of staying away from someone you have fallen for, is the specific, interior, not visible from outside cost that the staying away produces in the avoidant who cannot accept what has happened. What cannot be accepted without change? The acceptance problem is not simply about acknowledging the feeling, is about what accepting the feeling would require. Accepting that the falling happened would require acknowledging, at least to themselves, that the self-sufficiency has a genuine limit, that there is something, someone, that the interior cannot simply generate for itself. That the preferred configuration, restored through distance, is missing something it now knows is missing in a way it did not know before the falling. That acknowledgement is threatening to the self-sufficient architecture, not because it is false, but because it is true. The self-sufficiency has always been partly performance, has always been the constructed presentation of an interior that learned to present as not needing, because needing had produced the specific pain the wound encoded. The performance is real in the sense that the avoidant genuinely does function well independently, genuinely does find solitude sustainable, genuinely does not require the constant social contact that some people require. But the falling revealed that the self-sufficiency was not complete, was not the whole truth of the interior. Was the part that was safe to present alongside the part that was not safe to present, the part that can genuinely fall for someone, that can be genuinely claimed, that is genuinely affected by the presence and absence of a specific person in a way that the self-sufficient architecture was supposed to have made impossible. Accepting the falling means accepting the incompleteness of the self-sufficiency, means allowing the interior to be more than the managed, private, self-contained thing it has been presented as, means the vulnerability of being someone who fell specifically, genuinely, in the refuses to be managed way for you. That acceptance is not a small thing. Is among the most foundational changes available to the avoidance interior, is the beginning of the genuinely different relationship with their own experience that genuine change requires, and it is not something they can be argued into, cannot be produced by your patience or your understanding or the quality of your love, however genuine. Can only arise from their own honest reckoning with what the falling has revealed and what the staying away is costing, and whether those costs are sustainable against the alternative of accepting what happened and doing something real with the acceptance. What this means for you. The avoidant fell for you and cannot accept it, and that is why they stay away. All of that is real. All of it is the honest psychological description of what is happening in their interior and why the behavior is what it is. And none of it determines what you do with your life. The falling being real does not obligate you to wait for the acceptance to arrive. The staying away being produced by the acceptance problem rather than by genuine indifference does not mean the staying away is less costly to you. The interior reality of their genuine falling does not substitute for the practical reality of their genuine absence from your daily life. What this understanding offers is the specific, valuable clarity of accurate perception. The love is real. The falling happened, the staying away is not a verdict about you or about the connection. Is the acceptance problem expressing itself in the only behavior the system currently authorizes? That clarity is genuinely useful, removes the self-doubt that avoidant behavior reliably installs, restores the accuracy of your perception of what was real. Allows the grief to be honest because the loss was real and mutual rather than one-sided. And your life, the actual, present, genuinely available life that exists independently of the avoidance acceptance problem, is also real, is happening in the actual hours of actual days that do not pause pending the resolution of someone else's interior struggle. The avoidant fell for you. Cannot accept it, that is why they stay away. And your life deserves to be lived fully regardless of whether the acceptance ever arrives, not with bitterness toward the staying away, not with the forced indifference of someone performing having moved on. With the genuine, grounded, honest clarity of someone who knows what was real and is also completely, genuinely present in the life that is actually available. That life is here, now, yours, the specific moment the falling happened. There was a moment, not always identifiable in retrospect, not always dramatic or obviously significant at the time. But a moment nonetheless, the specific, particular instant when something shifted in the avoidance interior from the managed warmth of ordinary engagement to something that bypassed the management entirely. It was almost certainly a moment when you were not performing for them. When you were simply, genuinely, completely occupied with your own experience in a way that had nothing to do with how you were landing in their perception. The laugh that arrived before you could edit it. The opinion stated without first checking whether it was safe to state. The specific, unguarded quality of someone who had, in that moment, completely forgotten to monitor the effect they were having. The avoidance system, which was running its standard assessment, scanning for the signals of impending cost, calculating what continued engagement would require, maintaining the careful calibration of the appropriate distance, encountered something it had not specifically been configured to intercept. Someone who was not performing for them. And in that gap, in the specific absence of the directed, aimed, organized around the avoidant quality that the system was built to detect and assess, something happened in the interior before the system could prevent it. The falling, not gradual, not the slow accumulation of positive experience that wears down resistance over time. Immediate. The specific, sudden, registers before thought quality of something arriving in the interior without authorization, without the assessment protocol having had time to evaluate the cost, without the management protocol having had time to position itself between the genuine thing and the genuine response. The falling was complete before the system knew it was happening. And by the time the system registered what had occurred, by the time the alarm fired in response to the genuine claiming that had formed, it was too late to prevent it. The claiming was in place, the falling had happened. The interior contained something new that could not simply be removed by the same tools that would have prevented its arrival if they had engaged in time. What the system does when the falling has already happened. The management protocol was built for a specific problem, the problem of intimacy approaching from the outside and needing to be managed to maintain the preferred distance. The tools it contains are all outward-facing, ways of creating distance between the avoidant and the incoming intimacy, ways of managing the approach of another person's genuine failing, ways of preventing the closeness from deepening past the threshold where it becomes too costly. These tools were not built for the situation where the genuine feeling is already inside, where the claiming has already happened, where the falling is already present in the interior and is the thing that needs to be addressed rather than the approaching intimacy of someone else. So the system does what systems do when their tools are not adequate to the situation they are facing. It applies the available tools anyway. Attempts to use the outward-facing distance creation tools on an inward-facing problem. Tries to manage the falling by managing the proximity to the person it is directed at. Distance is created, the staying away begins, and the specific, logically coherent but practically insufficient belief underlying the staying away is this: if the proximity is reduced, the feeling will reduce. If the person is kept at sufficient distance, the claiming will eventually resolve. If contact is managed carefully enough, the interior will return to the preferred, self-sufficient, nobody has gotten through configuration it occupied before the falling. This belief is not accurate. The falling has already happened. The claiming is already in place. The interior already contains the specific, genuine, you specifically quality of someone who has gotten through in the way that makes their absence as costly as their presence. The distance being created does not address the interior state. It addresses the exterior proximity, while the interior state continues exactly as it was. The staying away is the system's best available response to a situation the system was not built to handle. It is inadequate. And the inadequacy shows up as the specific, persistent, cannot be fully managed gray that the staying away produces, the flatness, the specific quality of the preferred configuration feeling less preferred than it used to feel, the comparison that new connections produce consistently returning the same unhelpful result. The interior experience of not accepting. Not accepting the falling, not acknowledging it, not allowing it to be what it is, continuing to operate as though the preferred configuration is simply a matter of maintaining sufficient distance, is an active process, requires ongoing effort, is not the neutral, cost-free state of someone who has simply not yet engaged with something. The not accepting is work. In the mornings before the day's occupation engages, the falling is present, is the specific, current feeling directed at you quality of something genuine that has not been resolved. The management protocol re-engages. The day begins. The feeling gets covered by the occupation of the hours. In the unguarded moments, the pause between activities, the space between the end of one engagement and the beginning of another, the falling surfaces, has the specific, involuntary, cannot be scheduled quality of something stored whole rather than processed. The management protocol re-engages. The gap is filled. The feeling gets covered again. In the evenings when the productivity that stays ahead of the feeling has run out, the falling is most present. Has the specific, persistent, has nowhere to go quality of something that has been covered all day and is now in the hours when covering becomes more difficult. The management protocol runs at higher capacity to address the evening's reduced occupation. This is the daily experience of not accepting. The ongoing, energy-consuming, requires constant maintenance effort of having something genuine in the interior and continuing to operate as though it is not there, of carrying the falling while performing the self-sufficiency that the falling has revealed to be incomplete. The cost of this ongoing effort accumulates, is not dramatic, does not produce a single, identifiable breaking point, accumulates in the quiet, daily, shows up as flatness way that sustained suppression always accumulates. In the specific, ambient, difficult-to-source tiredness of someone whose interior is working harder than it appears to be. What accepting would actually require. Not the dramatic, all-at-once, nothing-held-back acceptance that the word can suggest. The specific, step-by-step, genuinely this is what is required process of accepting that the falling happened. The first step is the honest acknowledgement to themselves. The private, unwitnessed this is what is actually true acknowledgement that someone has gotten through. That the interior contains genuine feeling directed at a specific person, that the self-sufficiency that was supposed to prevent this has not prevented it, that the preferred configuration, however maintained through the staying away, is missing something it now knows is missing. This first step sounds simple. Is genuinely difficult for the avoidant because it requires dismantling the narrative that has been protecting the staying away. The narrative that the distance is clarity, that the staying away is the honest recognition of genuine insufficiency in the connection, that what is in the interior is manageable feeling rather than genuine falling. Dismantling this narrative means acknowledging that the staying away was produced by the acceptance problem rather than by genuine assessment. Means taking responsibility for the staying away as the avoidance it actually is rather than the wisdom it has been presented as. The second step is allowing the feeling to be felt rather than managed. Not expressed necessarily, the expression requires its own specific courage that comes after the feeling has been allowed, but felt, allowed to be present in the interior as what it is, genuine, specific, directed at you, without the immediate conversion into something more manageable, without the productivity that covers it, without the narrative that minimizes it. Simply felt in whatever moments the management protocol can be convinced to reduce enough for the feeling to be fully present. This step is more physically demanding than the first, is the specific, embodied, sometimes acute experience of feeling something that has been suppressed finding its full form, is not comfortable. Is genuinely difficult in the way that all genuine engagement with suppressed interior content is genuinely difficult, is the feeling revealing its actual size, which is larger than the management protocol has been allowing it to be. The third step is doing something with the acceptance, not necessarily reaching out immediately. Not necessarily the immediate conversion of the accepted feeling into behavioral change, but engaging at some level with the question of what the acceptance asks, what genuine acknowledgement of the falling would require, what doing something real with the reality of what happened would look like. For most avoidants, this third step is where therapeutic support becomes not just useful, but structurally necessary. Because the question of what accepting the falling asks, specifically, what it asks in terms of genuine behavioral change, in terms of engaging with the pattern that the staying away represents, in terms of developing the capacity to stay when the alarm fires, is more than most people can navigate alone in the territory of their own deepest defensive architecture. The difference between the falling and being ready. This distinction has been made throughout this body of work in various forms. It deserves to be made again here with the specific precision that this particular examination requires. The avoidant fell for you. That is the genuine, specific, cannot be undone reality of what happened in their interior. The claiming is present, the falling is real. Being ready, having the capacity to be in a genuine, sustained, shows up in ordinary moments relationship with the person they fell for, is a different thing entirely. Is not the automatic consequence of the falling. Is not produced by the genuineness of the feeling or the specificity of the claiming or the refusing quality of the love that will not stop. Being ready is the product of work. Specific, therapeutic, nervous system level, pattern addressing work that has nothing to do with the falling itself and everything to do with what the falling revealed about the gap between what the avoidant feels and what they are currently capable of sustaining. The falling revealed that genuine attachment is possible for the avoidant, that the claiming can happen despite the architecture. That the interior contains the capacity for genuine feeling directed at a specific person. These are genuinely significant revelations, are the evidence that the wound did not extinguish the capacity for love. They are not evidence that the capacity to sustain the love in the form a relationship requires is currently present. The capacity to fall is not the same as the capacity to stay. The capacity to claim someone in the interior is not the same as the capacity to be consistently, behaviorally, shows up on Tuesday present for them. The capacity to love genuinely is not the same as the capacity to love sustainably. Readiness, the genuine, developed, showed in behavior capacity to sustain what the falling produced, requires the specific work of addressing the alarm at the level where the alarm actually lives. Requires the repeated, supported, therapeutic context practice of staying when the alarm fires and discovering, through accumulated experience, that the alarm's prediction was not accurate. Requires the gradual, non-linear, requires continued commitment development of a different relationship to the interior that makes the staying possible in a way it is not currently possible. That work is available, is real, can genuinely change the pattern in ways that matter, and it is entirely the avoidance to do, cannot be done for them. Cannot be inspired into them by your patience or your understanding or the quality of your love, however genuine and however sustained. What you have been navigating. Understanding that the avoidant fell for you and cannot accept it, that the staying away is the acceptance problem expressing itself rather than a judgment about the connection, clarifies something about the specific difficulty of what you have been navigating. You have been on the receiving end of someone whose behavior contradicts their interior, whose staying away contradicts their falling, whose distance contradicts the claiming that the distance has not resolved. The specific confusion of this, of behavior that communicates one thing and an interior that contains another, is genuinely disorienting in a way that simpler situations are not. If the avoidant were simply indifferent, the situation would be painful but clear. The feeling is not returned, the connection is not what you understood it to be, the grief is honest because the loss is what it appears to be, but the avoidant is not indifferent, fell for you specifically. Carries the falling in the interior in the specific, genuine, refuses to be managed way that genuine falling always persists. The confusion arises because the interior and the behavior are in genuine contradiction. The interior saying this person matters, this falling is real, this is something genuine, and the behavior saying away, distance, the preferred configuration, the management protocol maintaining what it was built to maintain. Navigating that contradiction, holding both the evidence of genuine interior feeling and the evidence of genuine behavioral distance, without either inflating the first into a promise of what it has not yet produced or deflating the second into a judgment about what was never the truth, is genuinely difficult. Is the specific, demanding, requires real clarity work of holding two simultaneously true but contradictory things without resolving one into the other. You have been doing this. The specific ongoing costs something real work of holding the contradiction clearly, of not losing sight of either truth, neither the realness of the falling, nor the realness of the staying away. Neither the genuine quality of what is in their interior, nor the genuine cost of what is absent from your daily life. That work deserves acknowledgement, is not small, is one of the more demanding things available to someone in intimate relationship. The sustained holding of a contradiction that most people resolve quickly in one direction or another because the holding is too effortful to maintain. What clarity about this actually gives you? The clarity that comes from understanding why the avoidance stays away, the acceptance problem, the system's inadequate response to a situation it was not built to handle, the specific cost of the not accepting, what genuine acceptance would require. This clarity is valuable in the specific ways that accurate information is always valuable. It removes the self-doubt, the specific, corrosive, confidence-eroding doubt that avoidant behavior reliably installs in the people who love avoidance. The doubt about whether the connection was real, whether the feeling was mutual, whether your perception of what was there was accurate or wishful. The staying away, understood accurately, is not a verdict about you, is the acceptance problem. Is the system doing what it was built to do in a situation where what it was built to do is not adequate? Is the avoidance interior struggle finding its expression in the most available behavior? Is not information about your worth or the quality of what you brought or whether the connection was as real as you understood it to be? It removes the need to keep searching for the explanation. The specific, energy-consuming, keeps the orientation toward the avoidant active project of trying to understand what happened, what you did or did not do, what the behavior means about the connection, whether there is some configuration of yourself that would produce a different response. The understanding that the staying away is the acceptance problem means the explanation has been found. Is not about you, is not about your behavior or your qualities or the specific way you were in the connection, is about the avoidance relationship with their own interior and the specific difficulty of accepting what the falling produced. And it clarifies the only question that actually belongs to you, not what is in the avoidance interior, that is now understood. Not why they stay away, that is now understood. The question that is actually yours, what do you do with your life given the honest picture of what is there and what is not yet available? That question is not answered by more understanding of the avoidance psychology. Is answered by the honest, clear-eyed, for your own sake engagement with what your life actually requires and whether what is currently available to you is adequate to that requirement. The avoidant fell for you, cannot accept it, stays away because of the acceptance problem. All of that is real and accurately understood. Your life is also real. The actual present, genuinely inhabitable hours of actual days that are happening regardless of what is being privately, genuinely, refused to be managed, carried in someone else's interior. That life deserves your primary attention, not as a consolation for what is not yet available, as the basic, irreducible, honest truth of where you actually live and what actually constitutes your existence. The falling was real, your life is also real, both of those things are true, and only one of them is completely, unconditionally, without exception yours to inhabit it fully. Now, the specific exhaustion of loving someone who cannot accept their own love. There is a particular kind of tiredness that develops over time in this dynamic. Not the ordinary tiredness of difficulty or disappointment, the specific exhaustion of someone who has been holding clarity about a situation that the other person is not holding about themselves. You know the falling happened, have known it not from the framework, from your own direct, accurate perception of what was present in the connection. Have been holding that knowledge with more honesty than the avoidant has been holding it about themselves. Have been navigating the gap between what you accurately perceived in their interior and what their behavior was communicating, while they were avoiding the honest engagement with that same gap. This is genuinely tiring in a way that is worth naming directly, not just emotionally tiring. The specific cognitive and emotional exhaustion of sustained clarity in the presence of someone who is not meeting you in that clarity, of understanding what is happening while the person whose experience you understand continues to manage away from the understanding, of seeing clearly while the person being seen continues the work of not being seen. That tiredness is real and it has a cost that accumulates quietly. The ongoing effort of holding the accurate picture, the falling is real, the staying away is the acceptance problem. The distance is not a verdict about me, requires real energy, energy that would otherwise be available for the genuine investment in your own life. Energy that is being spent daily on maintaining clarity about a situation that the other person has not yet chosen to be clear about. This is not a reason for resentment. The avoidance difficulty accepting the falling is not malicious. is the honest, understandable, genuinely difficult to overcome expression of an interior architecture that was built for protection and is now producing costs it was not designed to acknowledge. The tiredness is not about blame, is simply the honest accounting of what the sustained holding of this situation has required from you. What the not accepting asks of you specifically. The avoidance not accepting asks something of you that is worth naming directly because it is rarely acknowledged as the specific demand it actually is. It asks you to hold the reality of the connection without the connection's reality being acknowledged by the person on the other side of it. To know what is there without being able to fully receive it. To carry the knowledge of genuine mutual falling without the other person being willing, yet, to carry it alongside you. This is an unusual position. In most relational contexts, the reality of a connection is either shared or it is not. Either both people know what is there and are navigating it together, or one person has misread the situation and is holding something that is not genuinely mutual. This situation is neither. Both people know something is there. One person is engaging honestly with what is there. The other is actively managing away from honest engagement with it. And the person engaging honestly is left in the specific, unusual position of holding the reality of a mutual connection without the mutuality being functionally present. What this asks is not nothing. Is the specific, ongoing, requires real resources demand of someone who has to maintain their own clarity without the support of the other person's matching clarity. Who has to hold the accurate picture without it being reflected back. Who has to know what is real without the other person's acknowledgement making the knowing easier to sustain. This demand is worth acknowledging not to make it sound more burdensome than it is, but to be honest about what the dynamic has been requiring. Because the energy spent on meeting this demand is energy that was always supposed to go toward something else, toward the genuine investment in your own life, toward the building that the silence has been making possible, toward the honest, for your own sake inhabiting of the existence that is actually completely yours. The permission you do not need but deserve to hear. You do not need permission to stop organizing your life around someone who cannot accept their own falling for you, not because the falling is not real, it is real, not because the connection was not significant, it was significant, not because what you felt and what you perceived was not accurate, it was accurate. But because organizing your life around the interior of someone who is not yet capable of accepting what their own interior contains is organizing your life around something that is not available to you in the form your life actually requires. The falling is in their interior. The acceptance problem is preventing it from becoming anything more than an interior state. The staying away is the acceptance problem's behavioral expression, and your life, the actual, present, happening in real-time life that deserves your genuine, fully invested, nothing held in reserve attention, is here, now, in the specific, ordinary, unglamorous hours that are actually available. You do not need permission to be fully present in those hours. To bring the full quality of your attention and your investment and your genuine caring to what is actually here rather than to what is present in someone else's unaccepted interior. To let the direction of your primary energy be your own becoming, your own relationships, your own work, your own ordinary daily experience of being alive. You do not need permission. But you deserve to hear that it is not only permissible but genuinely right, genuinely in service of the fullest, most honest expression of the life that is yours. Genuinely the most respectful thing you can do with the time and the energy and the specific, extraordinary quality of attention that you are capable of bringing to your existence. The avoidant fell for you, cannot accept it. Stays away because of the acceptance problem. That is real and it is theirs. Your life is also real, and it is yours, completely, unconditionally, without exception yours. What genuine investment in your own life actually looks like from here. Not the performed version. Not the life that looks invested from the outside while remaining fundamentally organized around the question of what is happening with the avoidant. The actual version. The actual version is built from genuine questions honestly engaged with, not what should be engaging you, what actually does. What you find yourself genuinely interested in when the orientation toward the avoidance situation is not consuming the available attention. What problems you want to engage with, what relationships you want to deepen, what work you want to do. What version of your daily life feels like genuine inhabiting rather than the maintenance of a life that is waiting for something? These questions are not answerable through deciding to answer them, are answered through the patient, trial and error, genuinely attending to your own experience process of trying things and noticing what produces genuine engagement versus what produces the performed appearance of engagement. The genuine engagement has a specific quality. Time moves differently during it. The background processing that is usually running, the orientation toward the avoidance situation, the monitoring of what is happening there, the quiet allocation of attention to the unanswered question of what the staying away will eventually produce quiets. Not because it has been suppressed, because something else has become genuinely more present. That quieting is what genuine investment in your own life actually feels like from the inside, not a dramatic absence of the avoidant from your thinking, a gradual, natural, not forced reduction in their prominence as the primary weather of your interior, produced not by deciding to think about them less, but by genuinely having more in your own life that is worth thinking about. That is the actual version, unglamorous, non-linear, available in the next hour if the next hour is genuinely, honestly, for its own sake invested in something that is actually yours. The honest end of this. The avoidant fell for you, that is real and it matters, and it is worth knowing clearly rather than doubting. The staying away is the acceptance problem, not a verdict about you or about the connection. The falling is genuine and is in their interior and is costing them something real in the daily gray of a life from which you have been kept at the distance the acceptance problem demands. All of that is real, and your life is also real. Is more real in the practical, shows up in your hours sense, than any of the interior realities described in this entire examination, is where you actually live, is made of the actual, specific, irreplaceable hours that are happening regardless of what is being unaccepted in someone else's interior. The most important thing, more important than the accurate understanding of the acceptance problem, more important than the clarity about what the staying away is and is not, is what you do with the hours that are yours. Not in service of producing a particular outcome in the avoidant, not as the move that finally makes the acceptance happen. Not as the strategy that converts the falling into something more than an interior state, simply because the hours are yours, because the life is yours, because the genuine, fully invested, nothing held in reserve inhabiting of your own existence is the most honest and most important thing available to you. The avoidant fell for you and cannot accept it. You are still here, in your own life, which has always been worth everything you are capable of bringing to it. Bring it, now, completely.